he sang, but he wasn't singing like, he did with the Dominoes. They didn't make that transition yet.
Can you imagine losing someone who helped create one of the greatest rock...
Today, keyboardist and vocalist Bobby Whitlock has died. Whitlock co-founded the blues rock band Derek and the Dominoes with Eric Clapton in
rock albums of all time. Someone who was there during your most creative...
1970. He died at his home in Texas. Bobby Whitlock was 77.
...moments, who shared the stage with you and who understood your music like no one else. That's exactly what happened to Eric Clapton when he lost his dear friend and musical partner, Bobby Whitlock. And after years of staying quiet about their relationship, Clapton finally spoke out about Bobby's passing in a way that shocked the music world. This is a story about friendship, music, heartbreak, and the power of speaking from the heart when it matters most. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and let me tell you about one of the most emotional moments in rock history. Bobby Whitlock wasn't just any musician, he was the heart and soul behind some of the most beautiful music you've ever heard. When he passed away on August the 10th, 2025, at the age of 77, the world lost a true artist. But more importantly, Eric Clapton lost a friend who had been part of his life for over 50 years. Now, if you know anything about Eric Clapton, you know he's not someone who talks much about his personal feelings. He's always been the quiet type, keeping his emotions close to his chest. For years, he rarely spoke publicly about the old days with Derek and the Dominoes, the band he formed with Bobby back in 1970. It was like those memories were too precious, or maybe too painful to share with the world. But when Bobby died, something changed. Clapton did something he almost never does. He broke his silence and shared his feelings with the world, and what he said was both beautiful and heartbreaking. Let me take you back to the beginning of this incredible friendship. Picture this. It's 1969, and a young Bobby Whitlock from Memphis, Tennessee, is playing keyboard and singing with a group called Delaney and Bonnie. They're touring Europe, and guess who Joe is them on stage? A guitar player named Eric Clapton, who was already famous but looking for something new in his music. The moment these two guys started playing together, magic happened. It wasn't just that they could play well together. It was deeper than that. Bobby brought this soulful, gospel-influenced sound from his days growing up in Memphis, while Eric brought his incredible blues guitar skills. When you put those two things together, you get something special. Bobby wasn't like other keyboard players. He had this warm, rich voice that could make you feel things just by listening to it. He could sing lead vocals, backup vocals, play piano, play organ, and even write songs. Eric saw all of this talent and knew he had found someone special. In 1970, they decided to form a new band together. They called it Derek and the Dominoes, and they brought in two other musicians, Carl Raddle on bass and Jim Gordon on drums. This wasn't just another rock band. This was four guys who understood each other's music so well that they could create something amazing together. The band went to Miami to record their first album at a place called Criteria Studios. The album they made there would become legendary. It was called Layla and Other Assorted Love Songs, and it's still considered one of the greatest rock albums ever made. Bobby wasn't just playing keyboard on this album, he was co-writing songs with Eric. Together, they wrote classics like Bell Bottom Blues, Why Does Love Got to Be So Sad, and Keep On Growing. Bobby's influence is all over that album. His piano playing, his vocals, his songwriting, it all came together to create something that still gives people chills today. But here's the thing about creative partnerships. They can be beautiful, but they can also be complicated. As Derek and the Dominoes became more successful, the pressure grew. They were touring constantly, dealing with record company demands, and trying to live up to the success of Layla. All of that pressure started to affect their friendship. Bobby and Eric began to see things differently. They had different ideas about which songs to play, how to arrange them, and what direction the band should go. What started as small disagreements grew into bigger arguments. The magic was still there when they played music, but behind the scenes, things were getting tense. By 1971, just a year after recording Layla, Derek and the Dominoes broke up. It wasn't a dramatic explosion or a big fight. It was more like a slow fade. The guys just couldn't make it work anymore, and they went their separate ways. For Bobby, this must have been incredibly hard. He had helped create something amazing with Eric, and now it was over. But Bobby was a survivor. He had grown up poor in Memphis and had worked his way up from doing small session work to co-founding one of rock's greatest bands. He knew how to pick himself up and keep going. Bobby started making solo albums. His first one, simply called Bobby Whitlock, showed that he could stand on his own as an artist. He kept that soulful sound that made him special, but now he was free to explore his own musical ideas without having to compromise with other band members. Over the years, Bobby kept making music, but he never achieved the same level of fame he had with Derek and the Dominoes. That's okay, though. Not every artist needs to be in the spotlight all the time. Bobby seemed happy creating music for people who truly appreciated what he was doing. Meanwhile, Eric Clapton went on to have one of the most successful careers in rock history. But here's what's interesting. He rarely talked about the Derek and the Dominoes days. It was like that period of his life was too personal to share with reporters and fans. But Bobby and Eric never completely lost touch. They would call each other sometimes just to check in. They weren't making music together anymore, but there was still a connection there. In 2000, they even appeared together on a TV show called Later with Jules Holland, where they performed bell-bottom blues just like old times. For a few minutes, it was like the years melted away and they were young musicians again, creating magic together. As the years went by, Bobby settled into a quieter life. He married a singer named Coco Carmel, and they made music together in small venues. Bobby also discovered a love for painting, creating abstract art that expressed his emotions in a different way than music did. Bobby's health started to decline in 2025. He was diagnosed with cancer, and despite his fighting spirit, the disease progressed quickly. His family and friends, including Eric Clapton, knew that time was running short. On August the 10th, 2025, at 1:20 in the morning, Bobby Whitlock passed away at his home in Texas. He was surrounded by his family, which is how he would have wanted it. He was 77 years old and had lived a full life filled with music, art, and love. When the news of Bobby's death reached Eric Clapton, something inside him shifted. This man, who had stayed quiet for so many years about their relationship, suddenly felt the need to speak. The next day, Clapton posted something on his social media that surprised everyone who saw it. He wrote, "Our dear friend Bobby Whitlock has passed away at 77. Our sincere condolences to Bobby's wife Coco and his family on this sad day. R.I.P. Bobby XX." Now, you might think that doesn't sound like much, but for Eric Clapton, this was huge. Remember, this is someone who almost never talks publicly about his personal relationships. He's famous for keeping his private life private, but Bobby's death touched him so deeply that he felt he had to say something. But Clapton didn't stop there. According to people close to him, he was deeply affected by Bobby's passing. Sources said that Clapton had been following Bobby's health closely during his final weeks. They hadn't worked together musically for years, but Clapton still cared about his old friend. The fact that Clapton spoke out about Bobby's death was seen as a big deal in the music world. It showed that despite all the years that had passed, despite the arguments and the breakup of their band, the connection between these two men had never really been broken. People who knew both Bobby and Eric said that Clapton's tribute was especially meaningful because it showed how much Bobby had meant to him. This wasn't just a polite statement about a former bandmate. This was a heartfelt goodbye to someone who had been part of one of the most important chapters of his life. Think about it this way. Eric Clapton has worked with hundreds of musicians over his long career. He's played with some of the biggest names in rock and blues, but when Bobby Whitlock died, Clapton felt moved to break his usual silence and speak from the heart. That tells you everything you need to know about how special their relationship was. The music world reacted strongly to both Bobby's death and Eric's tribute. Fans who had loved Derek and the Dominoes for decades suddenly remembered just how important Bobby had been to that sound. Without Bobby's keyboard playing, his vocals and his songwriting, Layla wouldn't have been the masterpiece it became. Music critics also took notice. Many of them wrote articles about how Bobby Whitlock had been underappreciated during his lifetime. They pointed out that while Eric Clapton became a household name, Bobby had remained in the background, even though his contributions to their music had been just as important. Bobby's wife, Coco, was deeply moved by Eric's tribute. In her own statement about Bobby's passing, she mentioned how much it meant to her that Eric had spoken out. She knew how much their friendship had meant to Bobby, even after all these years. The story of Bobby Whitlock and Eric Clapton is really a story about how music can create bonds between people that last a lifetime. These two men came from different backgrounds, Bobby from the gospel and soul traditions of Memphis, Eric from the blues scenes of London, but when they made music together, they created something that neither could have achieved alone. Their collaboration on Layla and other assorted love songs wasn't just about making a great album, it was about two artists pushing each other to be better, challenging each other creatively and creating something that would outlive them both. Yes, their band broke up. Yes, they had arguments and went their separate ways. But the music they made together continued to touch people's lives for over 50 years. Songs like Layla, Bell Bottom Blues, or Why Does Love Got to Be So Sad are still played on the radio today. They're still used in movies and TV shows. They're still performed by musicians around the world. When Eric Clapton finally broke his silence about Bobby's death, he was acknowledging something that fans had known all along. Bobby Whitlock was an essential part of some of the greatest music ever recorded. Without Bobby, there would be no Derek and the Dominoes. Without Bobby, Layla would have been a very different song. Bobby Whitlock's legacy isn't just in the recordings he made, it's in the example he set as a musician who stayed true to his artistic vision throughout his life. Even when he wasn't famous anymore, even when he wasn't selling millions of records, he kept making music because that's who he was. He showed that success isn't just about fame and money. Sometimes success is about creating something beautiful with people you care about. Sometimes success is about touching people's lives through your art, even if only a few people notice. Eric Clapton's tribute to Bobby reminds us that the relationships we build through music, through any art really, can be some of the most meaningful relationships of our lives. The people who understand our creative vision, who challenge us to be better, who share in our artistic journey, these people become part of us in a way that never really goes away. When Bobby died, a part of rock history died with him. But thanks to the recordings he left behind, and thanks to Eric Clapton's willingness to finally speak about their friendship, Bobby's story will continue to inspire musicians and music lovers for generations to come. The fact that it took Bobby's death to get Eric Clapton to open up about their relationship makes this story even more poignant. It reminds us that we shouldn't wait until it's too late to tell the people in our lives how much they mean to us. Whether you're a world-famous guitarist or just someone who loves music, the people who share our passions and help us create something beautiful deserve to know how important they are to us. Eric Clapton's tribute to Bobby Whitlock wasn't just about one musician honoring another. It was about friendship, memory, and the lasting power of music to connect people across time and space. It was about finally giving credit where credit was due and making sure that Bobby's contributions to rock history wouldn't be forgotten. As we remember Bobby Whitlock today, we're reminded that behind every great song, there are often unsung heroes who helped bring that song to life. Bobby was one of those heroes, and thanks to Eric Clapton's heartfelt words, more people now understand just how important he was to the music we all love. So the next time you hear Layla on the radio or any of the other classics from Derek and the Dominoes, remember Bobby Whitlock. Remember the kid from Memphis who brought soul and gospel to rock and roll. Remember the songwriter who helped create some of the most beautiful music ever recorded. And remember that sometimes the most powerful tributes are the ones that come from the heart, even if they come years too late. Bobby Whitlock may be gone, but his music lives on. And thanks to Eric Clapton finally breaking his silence, Bobby's story will be remembered and celebrated for generations to come. That's the power of music, and that's the power of friendship, even when that friendship gets complicated along the way. If this story touched your heart the way it touched mine, please hit that like button to show some love for Bobby Whitlock's incredible legacy. Share this video with any music lovers in your life who might not know about Bobby's amazing contributions to rock history. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and ring that notification bell so you never miss our deep dives into the stories behind the music you love. Together, we can make sure that the unsung heroes of rock and roll, like Bobby Whitlock, get the recognition they deserve. Thanks for watching, and keep the music alive in your hearts.